Governance to order. We'll take up the following items for approval. Action item 1A is approval of the minutes from the June 3rd, 2024 Committee on Governance meeting. I move the approval of action item 1A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Passed. We'll now address the policy calendar. Item 1B1 is a resolution to amend the responsibilities of the president and the duties of the department chairperson and include the roles of the provost and the school academic dean in the City University of New York bylaws and the Manual of General Policy. Executive Vice Chancellor and University Provost Wendy Hensel will present the item.
Great, thank you. Thought that I would, of course, we've been here before. We were here at the end of the last academic year and spoke about this. So I thought I'd just very quickly go through sort of what changed between the time that we were there, we were here before. There we go. Most important thing is really to highlight how much dialogue and discussion has taken place around this issue. And I know that my colleagues from the USS and UFS are here today, so hopefully you can speak to that as well. But you can see here quite a lengthy list of time, and what is not reflected in there is the extensive amount of written comments that were received, reviewed, and discussed. But most importantly, now this is the third draft that we've gone through with public comment. The drafts have changed substantially in alignment with requests from the University Faculty Senate. Since the last time I spoke to you, in addition to those additional meetings I just mentioned, we also sat down with members of the PSC and also received written feedback from the PSC. And from all of that collective feedback, we went through two versions and now are at the version that is in front of you. This session is a reading because these are bylaw changes, and so no vote will be taken by the board until the next meeting, not after this one, subsequent. So I mentioned all of this before, but worth saying again, why did we bother doing this, especially given how much energy and excitement it elicited? And really, it's time. The leadership structure has been in place for decades, but it's not reflected in the bylaws. The provosts and deans are nowhere in there, and there are ambiguities in the chair's roles that needed to be clarified. As has become very clear, I hope, in conversations with the faculty in particular, there has been no change, none, to the faculty role in governance, curriculum, or personnel. The faculty retain control over the things that they always retained control over. And there was never an intent to change that. There is some additional shared governance, but the primary authority is still where it always has been. And we made changes, I think, to make that clear. And you know, it goes without saying, I think, but worth saying, we are a really large organization, and we need to have clear roles. It helps everybody, and what we're proposing here is actually not very unique. It's quite reflected across higher education. So, of course, the continued issue, and we'll go through them here in a minute, is predominantly in the issue of course scheduling, where we did create a system where there is some additional review outside of the department chair, which we would argue, and I think the Faculty Senate would acknowledge, has always been true. We've always worked collaboratively in this space. This isn't actually a change, but it's a formalization of that structure. And of course, they can speak to their self about that. But as I said last time, that we have had issues in this. I hope I was able to demonstrate that in the conversations that we've had. And at the end of the day, no department chair, I think they've done a heroic job. This is absolutely not about a deficiency by the department chairs. It's about the inability of anybody that sits at a department level to understand how these things work together across a school and then across a college. Those are things that they never could do, and things that are vital to ensuring that students are provided with a schedule that meets, in fact, their needs and their demands. And just as a bottom line, really, we need ethics and equity here with transparency. So that's all what motivated this. So let me show you what changed and what the objections were. So from the last version that I showed you, I think the primary objection was the concept that a department chair reports to a provost or a dean, and that was not a correct statement of the relationship between them. And so we eliminated that phrase. There was no need to argue about that specifically. We identified specific tasks that had shared authority, like the course schedule, like recruitment of faculty, et cetera. Another objection was that there was too much detail in the new job duties for chairs, and so we eliminated that detail. We agreed didn't need to be in there. It was an area that we could compromise effectively. Another key objection was the course scheduling, as I mentioned. And here, what we made clear, which I think was not clear in the first draft, is that yes, chairs, as they always have, are responsible for developing that initial course schedule and making class assignments for faculty based on student needs. That is the same language that you will see in the old version of the bylaws. We then added the clarity that deans review that course schedule to evaluate whether it meets student needs across the school. You know, many departments have courses that intersect with other departments. There are resources that have to be balanced based on the needs of multiple departments that cannot be known or dealt with individually in isolation by a department chair. And then finally, of course, same concept, only one step further, that really the chief academic officer should be the one that holds the final approval across the college to ensure that it meets student needs and is in compliance with all policies. A few others here, that the job, there was a concern that we had diluted in some respect or intended to dilute the chair's role in recruitment and initiation of policy. We didn't, and so we changed it back to show clearly that we did not intend that effect. So that was the department chairs, and we provided, and I certainly can provide to this committee if you're interested, a side-by-side comparison as it related through each version. And as you can see in that side-by-side, it is considerable change from the first version based on faculty and student feedback. So then, of course, there was the insertion and addition formally of provosts and deans into the bylaws. And the key objection for president was that we called them the chief executive officer. And there was a concern that that diminished the control and suggested they were not in charge of the academic enterprise. And so we reinserted the language that they are the principal academic officer. This was really an attempt just to delineate roles, not to change responsibilities, and made clear in frankly some repetitive language, but I think it was important that it be in there, that really everything is the president's responsibility, including all academic matters, and that the provost is not an independent agent. The provost acts subject to the authority of the president. Again, something that has always been true in practice, so not a shift other than to formalize it in the bylaws. As for provost, there was a sense that, again, we were co-opting the president's authority and also the course schedule issue. So what did we do? We generalized the language of duties where there was concerns about specifics so that these things can be delineated, and then we did keep the language, as I said, but made clear that the role was to look across the colleges, which only the provost can do as it relates to course schedules. For deans, the objection, again, you heard me say, was reporting lines and any kind of approval of the schedule and co-opting the president's authority. So we made clear this is reviewing authority as opposed to approving, and that they are looking specifically at what department chairs cannot assess, and that is whether students' needs across the schools from multiple departments comply with college and university guidelines. And then finally, I will say, there certainly was a great deal of conversation about the concern, and understandably, that we were trying to modify the collective bargaining agreement with changes to the bylaws. And in fact, the collective bargaining agreement controls these things. And so that was always inherent within the bylaws, but we added into the resolution a clear statement that the changes were intended to be read consistent with the collective bargaining agreement. And certainly, to date, no one has identified for me a conflict with the collective bargaining agreement about where it is inconsistent. So that's where we are. I look forward to the comments of the folks at the table who participated in those meetings, and certainly they can speak for themselves about the process. Thanks.
Any comments?
Good evening. I'm Victoria Chevalier, the Vice Chair of the University Faculty Senate in the City University of New York, and a professor of English at Medgar Evers College. This statement was drafted by the collaborative efforts of the City University of New York faculty. Since March 2024, the faculty of the university have had several opportunities to give feedback on this proposal through the efforts of the University Faculty Senate. It is our opinion that the University Provost's Office carefully considered the feedback, and much of it has been incorporated into the current document. We would like to thank the University Provost's Office for listening to faculty input throughout. In the future, we look forward to early engagement in such matters of importance to the university. We are prepared to vote in favor of this resolution as it stands. There are still a few points that we continue to raise which we think would further improve this proposal. These include 1, the revisions use the term school, which is not currently defined in the bylaws. It creates confusion between the term division and a school and a college. No matter the size of the unit, the person designated to conduct duties of a department chair should be a ranked faculty member of the unit. 3, the purview of the provost's final approval and dean's review of the schedule should defer to the chair's primary responsibility, their academic judgment. 4, the new sections for provost and academic dean are currently misplaced. We recommend a new article to the bylaws on the organization and duties of campus administration. 5, the phrase consistent with college and university policies and guidance is used throughout the bylaws proposal. In the Manual of General Policy, labor contracts is added to the list. Labor contracts should be included in the bylaws also. And so in conclusion, we will be providing you the details of these suggestions following this meeting. We really appreciate the joint endeavor to ensure the quality of our governance structure. We look forward to future proactive engagement and shared governance with the Office of Academic Affairs and the Executive Vice Chancellor, Wendy Hensel. Thank you.
Any other, Provost? Do you want to?
I appreciate that, and certainly we'll take that under consideration.
Just one thing, Mr. Chairman, as a procedural matter, though, since this is a reading of the bylaws and not an actual vote, depending on how you work that out with the provost's office, some would have to offer a friendly amendment at the next meeting to amend
The next meeting, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, I guess I move to put policy item 1B1 on the calendar of the Board of Directors meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution is passed, and there will be a continuing dialogue starting now. No more items on the agenda. God, it's so convivial, it's like boring. I move to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
We're adjourned.
Let's go, Mets.